What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all having a great holiday so far. Today I wanted to take a look at Monster Hunter World on my PCs, and there's a couple reasons for this. I actually never looked at this game before on my channel, and the game's actually also risen in popularity quite a lot lately. As a matter of fact, if you look at the SteamDB website, there's 60,000 people playing on Christmas Day in the afternoon, at least here where I am, with Monster Hunter Rise at 13,000 and Starfield at 13,000. It used to sit at around 30,000 and it's risen all the way up to 113 peak players daily lately, so that's crazy. For example, Starfield has fallen off a cliff, unfortunately. Monster Hunter Rise has been at around 20,000 daily, so it's consistent at least, but I mean, Monster Hunter World is a lot more popular, and that's just on Steam. For what it's worth though, guys, I do hope Starfield can make a comeback because I feel there's potential there and they can fix things. But anyway, back to the task at hand. I'm going to run and test the game on both of my PCs. The first one will be RTX 4090 with a Ryzen 7800X 3D. And then my other PC will be a Radeon 7900 XTX with a Ryzen 9 5900X PC. Okay? Because from what I remember, this game was actually quite demanding, and it probably still is. So let's see how it works. We're going to begin with the RTX 4090 first, and then we'll look at the 7900 XTX, and then I'll give my thoughts and you guys can see both of them. Let's begin with the settings though. We're going to run the game at 4K, and I'm using my LG C1 OLED TV, 120 Hz. And we're using DX12 API, and I'm just using the highest graphical preset. It just makes things easier, more consistent. You just set it to highest and every setting is the same essentially. And the game does support DLSS as well, which I actually didn't know that it did. It's kind of an older game, but we are going to be looking at that as well later. So just to give a little bit of a background story about this game, I actually got this game for free when I bought my 5700 XT back in 2019, I think it was. And I put around 20 or so hours, 30 hours. I haven't really played it that much. I never really got into it that deeply, I guess. I never got that invested, but I did play it and I did enjoy it. This is pretty much how far I've made it. And I haven't played the game in like 3 years, guys, or 4 or something like that. So I don't really remember how to play really, but I do remember enough to kind of just head towards the quest, and we can look at the performance here. So we are using the DX12 API, and on this run I actually ended up having a crash in the middle of a fight, and that's when I ended up checking out DX11 as well, which we will look at that, and then we're also going to look at the same on the Radeon GPU as well. But we are getting some pretty good performance here. You can see the game is still rather demanding, right? I mean, this is a 4090 at 4K with maxed out settings. We're able to remain around 120 FPS, which is good, and our 1% lows are really good as well, so that is good to see. And I have to say, the game looks great actually. I mean, I played Monster Hunter Rise more, and that was fun. I do like playing with other people and kind of hunting the, you know, going on hunts, making a group, and then sort of getting ready for it, cooking food, get the buffs, and then I do like kind of chasing around the big animals, and I find that to be quite a lot of fun, the different stages, and then you know, checking their footprints and all that, so that is pretty fun. But yeah, I mean, even if you play by yourself, which is kind of how I played this game, was mostly by myself, I still had a really good time playing it. It's just that there's so many new games come out, and I kind of like to check them out anyway. So it kind of makes it more difficult to sort of dedicate a lot of time into a game for me. But I ended up engaging into battle with this big guy here. And yeah, I was excited to finally put my rusty skills at the test. And then I had essentially a graphics driver crash. And that's when I restarted the game and checked out DX11. After that driver crash or whatever it was, DX12 wouldn't launch, so I said okay, I'll just try DX11, and then I ended up turning DLSS on as well. And the odd thing with this game is actually you can turn DLSS on, but there is no actual setting that I can see. So I don't know what it's upscaling from. There's no like balance quality. Oh, this is one of those games, one of those unique games where you're limited to the settings you have when you're inside the game. So for example, we can't turn DLSS off or on or adjust graphical settings. As a matter of fact, even in the main menu, when you adjust most settings, it will require a restart. So I'm not actually sure what engine this is running on. I mean, it's Capcom. I don't know if it's their RE engine, maybe an older version of it. I'm not entirely sure, but that's kind of how it works. So that's kind of a bummer, but I mean, it is what it is. But if we look at our performance here, I mean, we were hovering around 100 to 120, and now we're at around 180 to 200, something like that. That's like a 60 to 70% performance gain. So that kind of leads me to believe that it could be like DLSS balance maybe, or I don't think it's performance. It's probably like balance or something like that. But yeah, I mean, the 1% lows are really good as well. They were really good previously, running it at 4K native with DX12. The 1% lows were great, and even now they're really good. They're 113. The frame time looks a little bit like, I don't know, it's like, it looks a bit jittery, but it's not really noticeable. I mean, if you look at the millisecond, it's between 5.7 and 6.2 or something like that. So it's not like you don't actually feel it while playing. It actually feels pretty smooth for the most part, because I am over my monitor's refresh rate. But yeah, I mean, this is a ton of performance. And as far as visual quality, I mean, to me it looks pretty much the same. I don't see any obvious things that stand out with older DLSS versions, especially like ghosting or anything. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure if this is this DLSS 1.0? Like, is this like FSR 1 before DLSS 2 became DLSS 2? So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I should look at the files, but I didn't think to do that. Anyway, that's besides the point. So yeah, the performance gain here is immense with DLSS on, and even though there is no FSR in the game, because there was no FSR at this time when this game came out, there is Fidelity CAS upscaling, so the spatial upscaler for the AMD card, and we are going to look at that as well. Which, speaking of which, we're going to jump on the RX 7900 XTX now. I think we get a kind of a good idea here with the performance of the 4090 and 7800X 3D. So yeah, I think it's time to check out the 7900 XTX. I tried to find the big guy I was fighting earlier, but I don't know, he wasn't around. So yeah, we're gonna move on, guys. Let's jump on my other PC now. Alright, so now I'm on my all AMD PC with a 7900 XTX. We're going to go through our settings again. And again, we're running the game at 4K with DX12 API right now. And highest preset, obviously. And then as you can see here, we do have access to FidelityFX CAS plus upscaling, which we will look at a little bit later. But for now, let's jump into the game in that same area and see how this PC does. Alright, now that we've loaded into the map, we can see that the 7900 XTX is a bit behind from the 4090. Kind of expected, I guess. But yeah, on the 4090 we was around 120 FPS, and here we're at around 80 to 90, so about 35% or so advantage for the 4090. However, as you can see, the frame times on the 7900 XTX are great as well. As a matter of fact, they're really good, very consistent. Getting around 90 FPS with mid 70s, 1% lows. That's actually really good. The game feels great to play, no problem. It's nice and smooth, and it looks pretty good as well. We'll catch up with the lizards and engage in some combat and take a look at our performance. And again, it's very consistent. The 5900X is kicking butt here as usual. And I mean, speaking of which, I do get comments sometimes from people thinking that it's like a slow CPU. Not necessarily slow, but like it's as if it's not enough for the 7900 XTX. It's actually a very powerful CPU, guys. It does really well. As you will see when we turn the upscaling on, it's still capable of keeping the 7900 XTX GPU bound, which is kind of what you want to see out of your CPU, right? But yeah, anyway, that's besides the point. Let's go tackle the big guy. I had to do a little bit of running around, but I eventually found him. And yeah, guys, I mean, I did about a 10 or 15 minute recording here with this, so we'll sort of skip to the end here. And the 1% lows remained in the mid 70s, so that is great. A very good performance here, guys, from both of these. I could probably take a look at the game on the 3080 Ti and 6800 XT if there's any interest, but yeah, I mean, I clearly don't really know what I'm doing. I did a little bit of the training area just to kind of familiarize myself with the buttons, but yeah, I mean, this game is pretty complex. It's not difficult to master, although maybe it is with some type of with some of the weapons it can be, because some of them are more complex than the others. But I mean, it's easy to get into, I would say, and enjoy, especially if you have a friend you can play with. And voice chat with them. It's a lot of fun. That's kind of how I like to play these games. But yeah, let's check out towards the end of the fight. Although I never got to kill the guy because I was trying to make this video, so I wanted to restart and check out DX11 and the upscaling as well. But this is towards the end of my recording, which was about 15 minutes later from when we started. And as you can see, the 1% lows, averages, and frame rate is very good, very consistent. It looks great. Now, let's check out DX11 because, you know, it's like usually AMD GPUs weren't as good as NVIDIA on DX11, or NVIDIA once had a bit more of an advantage. That's kind of the sentiment around it, I guess. So let's see how it runs on DX11, and then we'll also check out the upscaling. We'll begin with the settings again, and all we've done is went from DX12 to DX11. So let's go back into the game. Alright, so now we're running with DX11 4K native again, and this is another 10 to 15 minute recording I did. And I didn't actually see any major differences, except for a couple hitches here, which I think had to do something with loading. Maybe the differences between DX12 and 11, because I didn't really notice this on DX12 with the Radeon, and I don't think I noticed it on the NVIDIA either on DX12 or 11. But yeah, other than that, other than this area here, it was actually pretty smooth. As a matter of fact, what we'll do is we'll just kind of fast forward through a couple of the fights, and then reach a conclusion in the end, and then we'll check out upscaling. This time around there was a ton of these little lizards, so I might have actually recorded more than 15-minute footage, probably like a half an hour, I don't know. But skipping towards the end of the recording, so about 15 minutes later, as you can see, the frame times and frame rate is still pretty much almost the same, right? We were in the mid 70s for 1% lows, and it's the same here with the DX11. The frame time graph isn't as flat, but then again, those are very tiny variations which you don't really feel. It's usually the big ones that you feel that stand out the most. But I would say DX12 is probably the better choice if you're playing on a modern AMD GPU, for sure. I mean, all new games are DX12 these days, so yeah, it's not even a question, but I figured I'd take a look at it. Why not? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at upscaling now, and then wrap up the video and come to a conclusion, I guess. Now we'll go ahead and enable FidelityFX CAS Upscaling here and get in the game and see the type of performance we get. Like with DLSS, there is no slider here, so we don't really know what it's upscaling from. But we'll take a look at the metrics and see what we're getting, and 130-ish FPS. So yeah, that's actually pretty good. That's a pretty nice jump, going from 80 to 90 to the 140s. It looks like that is a pretty good, nice performance jump for us. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, like looking at this, it doesn't really look all that different. I mean, the graphics in this game are kind of fuzzy anyway, but I'll put in a quick side-by-side here so you guys can see. I have 4K native on the left and CAS upscaling on the right. I would say they both look pretty good. You get a nice jump in performance. So yeah, that's a nice little feature that you have in your back pocket. So whether you have NVIDIA or AMD or RTX, GTX, whatever, you have options. So that's nice. But yeah, this is kind of similar as far as performance-wise behavior as it was with DLSS, right? The 1% lows remain pretty good. We can see the Ryzen 5900X is still more than capable. We're still GPU bound here. GPU at 100%, 405 watts, which is what this GPU draws when it's at 100%. And yeah, no problem here. Some pretty good performance, guys. I'll just do the same thing here and kind of skip towards the end of the recording, which is about 15 minutes, like I said. So that kind of gives you a good indication of the performance behavior on both of these PCs with this game. Let's go ahead and tackle the big guy. Well, to wrap it up, I am maybe a little surprised. I thought that maybe both these GPUs, maybe they would do a little bit better, maybe get a little more FPS, just because this game came out, what, 3 GPU generations ago? I got it with my 5700 XT when I bought that brand new, and I believe then Iceborne had just come out. But we are getting solid performance, don't get me wrong, and I do recall the game being very demanding at the time. So why do you think this game has increased in popularity all of a sudden? I personally think that the Game Awards may have had something to do with it, and Capcom essentially announcing their next Monster Hunter Wilds game, which if you look at it actually looks pretty good, the trailer, but it also looks a lot like a Monster Hunter World sequel. I think that could have had something to do with it. So people jumped into it. But yeah, I mean, this game is more popular than Monster Hunter Rise right now, a lot more popular. And as we looked at Starfield as well. But yeah, that's besides the point. But anyway, guys, I'm just going to wrap it up now. Another long video, I guess, but I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, give it a like. I did enjoy coming back into this and looking at it. I might actually play it for a little bit because I'm having fun with it, but consider subscribing if you haven't and you like content like this. And leaving a like helps, as I'm sure you probably heard it a million times, commenting and all that stuff. Speaking of which, if you have any criticisms or suggestions, if you want me to look at a particular game, if I can, I would. So yeah, let me know. And I appreciate you guys watching my video. I hope you have a great rest of the holiday, and thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.